Well, good afternoon. My name is Peter Tomlinson. I'm one of your state extension specialists. My original job is state extension specialist for environmental quality. And so the areas that I work in, manure nutrient management, water quality, looking at gaseous losses primarily from nitrogen. Lucas will highlight some of the projects we've been working on in that area in his talk. And I have, because that wasn't enough, I also represent K-State Research and Extension on the State Conservation Commission. So there are 5 appointed commissioners as well as research and extension delegate from K-State, and the state engineer and the state conservationist from NRCS. So I've recently added on interim director of the soil testing laboratory, and so wearing several hats right now. Sandra and Cody handed out this is the producer sheet for submitting soil samples. This one asks a couple questions in there. One, recording the sampling depth in inches, what the anticipated yield is for the intended crop that it's going to be planted to, and in case that intended crop doesn't happen, what is your alternative crop, and then what is your anticipated yield there. Questions about tillage, irrigation, previous crop, and if you fill out all of that information, when you get the report back from the lab, you're not just going to get a number. They will actually, if the form is completed, you will get a fertilizer recommendation as part of that report. And so if you're looking for P recommendation, we need to know if you're planning at the bottom to use a sufficiency-based application or a sufficiency-based P management approach, or if you're working in build and maintain, and if you're in the build phase or have moved into the maintenance. So that's some information that we need about the field that the sample represents. I'll just highlight here, so on the top right-hand corner are some of the basic packages that are available. In terms of, depending how much information you want, package 1 is really kind of the base that gives you water and buffer pH, P and K. If you want a little more information, package 2 then adds on organic matter and zinc. Package 3 adds on calcium, magnesium, sodium, and CEC. So depending where you are, those are some basic packages. What I will say, and this is a point of confusion sometimes, to any one of those 3 packages, you can add nitrogen if you want a nitrogen value on that top 6 inches. You just need to make a note. And the price for inorganic N is on the back. Those are individual analyses that you can request from the lab. And so if you want just nitrate, that's $2.75 per sample. If you want both nitrate and ammonia, it's $3.75, and those can be added to any package. The profile package, which includes nitrate, sulfur, and chloride, that is really your profile N sample. And so that's designed around a 0 to 24-inch sample to look at what's in your profile for determining your nitrogen calculation for the growing crop. And
can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What if they give you 12 inches? What happens when you give them the recommendation?
I'm still learning that, Sandra. Thank you for the stumper. I will have to visit with Brian on that. I believe he tries his best to, he will give you a reported value. He probably will not give you a recommendation because nothing is calibrated for a 12-inch sample.
So the software is calibrated for a 24-inch sample, correct?
For a profile, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the end recommendation is based on, is a 24-inch sample.
Okay.
I mean, we could give you a number, but we don't know what's below that. Lucas?
Yeah, so I mean, the most important thing there is make sure you get the depths on the sheet, because last I knew, the way that if you tell them it's a 12-inch, they'll calculate a total pounds of N knowing that that sample was from 12 inches. So, I mean, we're likely missing nitrogen.
Yeah.
But if you don't give them a depth and we assume it's 24, but it's really a 12, that's going to throw off what's reported back.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll do our best to get you as much information based on the information that you give us, but, you know, recognize that our calibrations are built around a 6-inch sample for P and K, and nitrogen is built around a profile sample of 24 inches. So, so that's just to highlight a few things, questions that I've had since taking over. We had a great conversation with Sandra and Cody and other agents at our area update, and so just wanted to get that shared with everybody. So I'm going to jump in here. We'll spend the majority of my time talking about soil pH, particularly pH stratification that we're seeing, implications for nutrient management, and then, is anybody using manure? Just a little bit. I may highlight a few slides, but I won't spend much time on that. So this just kind of hits some of the things that I'll be talking about. And so we'll jump in here, and you know, as I've been thinking about this question of soil pH and soil health, was doing some reading and came across this table, and what we're looking at here is relative yield at different soil pHs. And so, you know, 100 is the best. That's where we're, you know, really optimizing that yield. And so we see, and I'll focus here on corn, wheat, and soybeans. You know, soil pH of 6.8 is really where we're optimizing, or our relative, we're optimizing that relative yield. As we start to decrease, so become more acidic, we're not able to achieve or maximize that yield, and that's an impact of soil pH. So we see corn, certainly as you get down to 5 and below, that really starts to have an impact, negative impact on your yield. When we look at wheat and soybeans, less sensitive to those really acid conditions, but we're still leaving yield on the table because of pH. When we look the other direction to alkaline soils, we can see the same effect there. And so, you know, I think this just kind of highlights, you know, our crops are sensitive to pH. It's something that we need to be thinking about. And when we look at a graphic such as this, and I'll just set it up here, so we've got pH going from 4 to 10. This box here in the center marks the range of 6.2 to 7.3, kind of that optimum plant production, crop production range for soil pH. And then as the graph narrows, that indicates that we've got low nutrient availability. when it widens out here, and it's got a green color, so I apologize if anybody is colorblind, but where it widens out, that means that you've got high availability of the nutrient. And so nitrogen, we see that both strongly acid and strongly alkaline conditions result in low availability, and nitrogen is really optimized in that, nitrogen availability is really optimized in that 6 to say 8 pH range. Phosphorus, a little bit tighter in that optimum range, really between 6.2 and 7.3. And we drop off pretty quickly in terms of low availability as we go into acidic conditions. And interestingly enough, with phosphorus, we'll see a decrease in availability to about pH of 9. And then we actually start to see an improvement in availability above that, just as the chemical reactions are at play. It impacts that phosphorus availability, and then potassium, sulfur, some of our key micronutrients down here. Actually, a number of those have improved plant availability at lower pHs. So a bit of a balancing act there. But I set this up to highlight one of the things that we're observing is in long-term no-till, we're really seeing some pronounced stratification of soil pH, but other nutrients such as phosphorus as well. And so this is out of long-term nitrogen trials in Oklahoma. So we've got soil pH range from 4 to 7.5 across the top here. And then we've got sampling depth going down. And so they sampled in 1-inch increments to a depth of 6 inches. Those should be inches, not feet, sorry. 1-inch increments to 6 inches. And so we can see stratification occurring across all of the N rates. So this dark blue here is 0N, and at the Lahoma site pairing with that is 0-2056. So no nitrogen, some P and K. And then as we add more nitrogen, we decrease that pH, and that stratification becomes more pronounced. And so Lahoma, pH at that near surface top inch down to pH of 5, and at 6 inches, 5.8 or so. So if you're going to average a 6-inch sample, you're probably going to end up at that highest N rate of 90 pounds of N. You're going to end up, somewhere in that 5.4 range. Still water is based on the soil at that location. Starts off, so the 0N starts off seeing kind of more acidic condition to begin with. Still see that stratification with depth. But as they've added nitrogen, we're down into the mid-4s at those higher N rates. And similar trend happening at Perkins. And so, this highlights, neighbors to the south are seeing this. We're seeing similar things across Kansas as well. So this comes out of the long-term cover crop study in Manhattan that Craig Rosenboom started in 2007. So it's a 3-year crop rotation cycle. So this was looking at the average of, so we've got every phase of the rotation. So it takes, we were sampling following cover crops headed into grain sorghum. And so this would have been basically at 9 years into the study. we're seeing some stratification. Certainly this goes down to 60 centimeters. And so we're seeing it, but when we came back now 15 years into the study, we start to see even more of that stratification showing up. Not really seeing a strong influence of the different cover crop treatments, but the N management is definitely influencing that stratification. And as we increase nitrogen, particularly at those near surface depths, we're seeing greater stratification, and we're in the mid fives for soil pH there. Based on some conversations we were having at the meeting this morning, these are some snapshots of a long-term tillage and nitrogen study that Augustine has published out of Hayes. This highlights that with both the no-till and conventional tillage, just the addition of commercial fertilizer impacts soil pH, but we see that it's more pronounced in the no-till at that near surface depth. This would be 2 inches, and then at that 2 to 6 inch depth, we're not seeing much for difference between the conventional and the no-till. So Lucas and I it's part of a nitrogen management project with Department of Energy and grain sorghum. And we had 81 acres. That was our sampling site on 1 acre grids. And been looking at this data as we're getting final reports pulled together on this project. We only sampled at a 0 to 6 inch depth, but at the site in 2021 here, 49% of the samples had a pH below 6.2. So I thought that was interesting. We know this is no-till. For the most part, no-till. Occasional sweep is run there, but not an inversion type of tillage that's going to result in a lot of mixing. I really wish that we had 0 to 3 inch samples, because I think it could really highlight that we're seeing that pronounced stratification, but I think we are picking up that signature even on a 6 inch sample. Why is it? What's causing this? Well, it's and this is as deep as I'm going to go into chemistry on you all tonight, but it's our reactions with our nitrogen fertilizers. So if we look at anhydrous ammonia, starting with ammonia, we add some oxygen here, and that reaction releases a hydrogen ion, our nitrate, and some water. And so that is the culprit behind nitrogen fertilizers decreasing pH. The breakdown of urea, same thing. We result in 2 free hydrogen ions. Ammonium nitrate, 2 free hydrogen ions. So all of those common, anhydrous ammonia, urea, ammonium nitrate, urea, ammonium nitrate, all of those products are going to contribute free hydrogen ions that are going to drive down your soil pH. And so if we're broadcasting nitrogen, if we are doing a shallow placement of that nitrogen, this is what is contributing to that stratification that we're seeing in long-term no-till. When tillage was in there, you're mixing 6 to 8 inches on a regular basis. You remove that mechanical operation now, and now we can start to see that pronounced stratification develop. And so when you start pushing down, below 6, you definitely start impacting the availability of phosphorus. And once you get below 5.5, you start impacting availability of nitrogen, potassium, and sulfur. And so, the other thing that has been observed is coupled with the pH in the pH stratification in long-term no-till, we're also seeing phosphorus stratification in long-term no-till. And so this is some work out of Heston that Mark Clausen did when he was with K-State. This was a 20-year rotation. He had the solid lines are no-till, and we're no-till sorghum here in the blue, and the green with the triangle is no-till wheat soybean. Both of those no-till systems, we saw pronounced stratification. Oh, thank you, Lucas. In that top 2 inches, and a little bit at that 2 to 4, and really no difference by the time we got to that 4 to 6 inch depth. Where they had reduced tillage, we still see some stratification, but it's certainly not as pronounced as the true no-till system. Out of the paper that Augustine has published out of Hayes, he's got his different nitrogen rates here, but this is looking at soil depth and phosphorus concentrations. And again, we see that higher soil phosphorus at that, he picked up an interaction with nitrogen as well, but at that near surface, we see those higher phosphorus concentrations there as well. And we saw this in the long-term cover crop study at Manhattan. So I think there's pretty strong evidence of pH or phosphorus stratification as well. It makes me think and wonder, if we've got that pH stratification at that same depth, when our crop is germinating and early growth and development, we're not necessarily in an ideal condition. I think we're potentially impacting, some small root development in that top inch, and certainly maybe having some limitations in P availability. One of the questions that was a lucky observation out of our Kansas Agricultural Watershed Project was we wanted to look at different phosphorus management practices, but luckily Dr. Nathan Nelson decided to do some, rather than just 6-inch samples, pull 0 to 2 inch and 2 to 6 inch samples. And so we've been able to look at, from the beginning of this study in 2014, how quickly does stratification develop. And so top 2 inches had a soil test P right around 30. That 2 to 6 inch sample was about 10 parts per million malic 3. At that deeper depth, we haven't really seen, we've seen a little bit of a decline out in 2019, and we've got some more recent data to add to this. But we're starting to see a little separation, but relatively small decline. Our control treatment here, we've seen that consistently decrease every year at the surface 2 inches, but in that, so the orange is fall broadcast, and the gray bar is spring injected. That's a 2x2 placement with the planter, or the goal is 2x2. I think we're probably closer to to an inch in terms of placement with the planter. We've been working over the years to improve that. But really by year 4, 2018, we started to see a jump and pronounced stratification. So top 2 inches, we were 70 parts per million, thereabout. Dr. Nelson actually looked at some 1-inch samples, and we were over 120 parts per million in just the top inch of the soil. So
Bottom line 2 to 6.
bottom line is 2 to 6,
What
yes.
was the removal rate during those years? What's the yield of what kind of crop trees?
So that's a corn-soybean rotation.
What kind of yields are you getting?
We've been,
This irrigated?
nope, dry land. We've been on corn 140 to 180 bushel corn, and I think we've been pretty consistently 60 to 80 bushel beans.
Okay.
And so this was, what's shown here is under build and maintain management. What we're getting pulled together is the data. We went through the fall broadcast got converted to a sufficiency-based management, so we've gone through a drawdown period, and then we're working right now, we're in a yield-based sufficiency application is the newer data that we're working to get pulled together to update this graph. So other things to think about as we think about the broader context of soil health. Certainly as soil pH decreases, we see an increase in acidity, that impacts our soil microbial community. We see smaller size of the microbial community, and we see a less diverse microbial community. And so why is that important? Well, the microbial community is an important driver of nutrient cycling, of organic matter decomposition. And so, if you don't have as many players and you don't have the number of players, that can slow some decomposition as well. It's not, nutrient cycling isn't working as efficiently. We also need to think about herbicide effectiveness. And, when we get into those acidic soil conditions at the near surface, the thought is that there's some interactions with how effective our herbicides are. And so I know Sarah Lancaster and Jeannie are thinking about that and trying to think through how to look at that in these situations where we've got pH stratification and acidic surface soils. So that is what I have on this. Questions, thoughts, comments? All right.
Has your research primarily been with phosphorus on stratification, or are you also tracking some of the other nutrients?
Most of what I've been directly involved in has been phosphorus. We've got the soil samples, we've analyzed for other nutrients, but what we've gotten summarized so far has been primarily the phosphorus data.
She asked about stratification of other nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
We did a quarter section that was at 30 years no-till about 4 years ago, and did it all the way down to plus 12 inches,
Mm-hmm.
2 inches. All the nutrients are
Stratified.
stratified. Sulfur's not as bad as some of the others, what you'd expect at it.
Yeah.
Bleach is about half as bad as nitrogen. And I'm very concerned because, and you showed it on there on all your graphs, where do we get our erosion, soil erosion from? The top half an inch?
Yep.
Top quarter inch? And the phosphorus in that top inch is really high.
Yes. I didn't include the water quality graphs that I have to go with the data from the Kansas Agricultural Watershed, but that is what we've seen in the longer that project has been in no-till, And interestingly, particularly where we've added cover crops into that crop rotation, the cover crops are decreasing the particulate P and the sediment, but we've seen an increase in dissolved reactive phosphorus coming out in the runoff because, we've got that concentration of P at the surface, and we believe there, as we slow down that water and that runoff water and give it a longer time to interact with the near surface soil, we're seeing that
It's bringing that
phosphorus.
solution.
Yep.
Pulling it out of the,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually pulling it out of the.
Out of that near
leaving
surface.
The soil particle, the organic matter, sand,
Yep.
clay.
That's staying, but we're
The
seeing.
water is getting like salt, it's salt, yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing more dissolved phosphorus leave.
So the next thing is what do we do about it? We know surface application for yield is fine.
Yeah, I think placement is, the deeper we can get those nutrients placed, I think that plays an important role. I think when we get into these pronounced stratification, one, we need to be paying attention to the pH and liming. But I think we also need to look at and consider, if we've been in build and maintain and have been targeting a, 30 part per million Malic 3 as kind of our goal, I think it is worth looking at sufficiency. It took us 3 years to draw that soil phosphorus down, and we did see a reduction in our P loss in the runoff water. And so we drew it down for 3 years, and now we are triggered to when we started adding sufficiency-based P application back in was when our first indication of a negative impact on yield. So, now we're
How did you measure that?
because we had
Indication of yield, how did you measure that it was affecting it?
because we had the build and maintain plots where we hadn't changed the P management, and then our sufficiency during that drawdown phase, we looked at the difference in the yield between the sufficiency and the build and maintain, and if there was no statistical difference in the yield, we considered that we could continue to draw down that soil test P, and it was in that third year, and it was statistically significant, but it was, we were not talking more than 10 bushel difference between the sufficiency and build and maintain, and that's when we switched. Then we started adding at a sufficiency.
10 bushels is $30. That's a lot of fertilizer you start adding.
But, our sufficiency-based application now is about half of the build and maintain. And I'm going off of memory. I have all those slides, but, our sufficiency is about half of the build and maintain. So,
Where was the phosphorus at when you noticed that plot difference of 10 bushel? You remember? What was this P on it?
I don't remember that
It
off.
was like at 32 when you started, it looked like, or in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I believe, I don't remember that off the top of my head. We were looking at the 6-inch critical limit, which is about 20. And so we were looking at that as well as yield, and we were right around our critical limit according
I
to.
think you've confirmed that 20 then on this test, that 20 is definitely too low.
20 is where you stop seeing a response. 20 and above, your chance of seeing a response to additional phosphorus is minimal. You expect that it'll be responsive to phosphorus below 20. And so that's that tipping point to where you don't expect to see you don't expect to see a yield response. your return on additional P isn't, going to be as profitable. I am happy to pull up those slides at the end after Lucas is done, and we can dig into some of the water quality slides.
You've got some good slides, I mean, good information.
So, how are we doing on time, Sandra?
You have about 10 minutes.
You know, when you talk about manure, the feedlot over here that's expanded up to 30,000, they're selling manure. That's something new in our county. People actually selling manure. So, what's the price on that?
What's the price?
Depends on how far you are from it. Basically, the farther you are, the more it costs.
Yep. And Sandra told me nobody used manure here.
Not as much.
Well,
They won't.
prior to that coming in,
There wasn't a- yeah.
People, I mean, 1,000
Yep.
head of cattle don't.
Yeah, right.
Much for grain. But they are actively looking for people to
Yeah.
take their manure.
Okay. Well, good. I will share a few of my thoughts on manure. My graduate work, manure is kind of dear to my heart. I know that is odd. But my master's work was done at my master's and PhD work was done at the University of Arkansas, and was on poultry litter. So I think that manure does have a place in our soil fertility programs. Couple cautionary things to think about in terms of manure management. We got to think about it as being an unbalanced fertilizer. And what I mean here is we can't go to the manure, the co-op, we can go and order the blend that we want. The manure, we're dealing with what comes out of the back end of the cow or the chicken. And so, they have taken the nutrients that they need out of that grain, and we're left with the excess. And so typically what we see is if we apply manures on a nitrogen basis, we are going to exceed our crop phosphorus requirements, and we will start to build up our soil test phosphorus. And this is what has really brought, and I don't know if anybody has been paying attention to the news in Oklahoma the last month or so, but state of Oklahoma there's a major lawsuit that's been going on for 15 years now with the poultry industry, and there's some settlement that's come out of that just in the last month. But it all has to do with excess phosphorus from years of poultry litter application. If we apply on a phosphorus basis, we minimize our impact on water quality. And if you are buying that manure, please think about it as part of your fertility program. You are not a livestock producer that is thinking about it from a manure disposal and, how do I get rid of this excess that is impacting my confined animal feeding operation plan. So think about it as part of your fertility program. And I will give these slides to Sandra to share with you all. Just some manure math. I'm not going to go through that in detail. When we were looking at really high input prices, late 2001, 2022, we were pushing 85 cents per pound of N, 85 per pound of P. Thankfully, P has come down. From what I was hearing this morning, we haven't hit 85, but N's been creeping up. I know looking at numbers last week, we're 60 to 70 cents per pound of N. But the calculations that I have done here in terms of fertilizer values are based on these numbers. And so poultry litter, first year, $65 per ton. Why is that higher than feedlot manure at $16 per ton? Poultry litter is a more nutrient-dense manure. So per ton of manure, you're getting more out of it. I left these in because I know there has been some poultry development in south central Nebraska, and so I didn't know if there'd be any that might be trickling down this way. You know, when you look at that, when you start to also account for the residual, that organic N and P that takes more time to break down, you know, I think you're 110 per ton on poultry litter, 28 per ton based on these numbers for feedlot manure. I think that manure value is actually much greater. We haven't accounted for micronutrients that come along with that manure. We haven't accounted for organic matter that comes along with that manure. And so you're getting a lot, you know, poultry litter more than the feedlot. You get also some liming benefit with that manure when you bring it in. And so, you know, that's why I say I think the value is actually greater than these numbers would suggest. Just in terms of thinking about and highlight, you know, how to avoid that excess P. You know, if we work it from a nitrogen-based planting approach, and you know, I've just pulled these numbers sitting at my desk one day. You know, yield 20 tons per acre, corn silage, and I ran these calculations with both feedlot and poultry litter. Anticipated N uptake, 165 pounds per acre. You're going to need about 10 tons of feedlot, 2.5 tons of poultry litter. If we think about it from a phosphorus-based standpoint, for that 20 ton of corn silage, P2O5 uptake, we expect that to be around 64 pounds per acre. And we're going to need, you know, 5.2 tons to the acre of that feedlot manure, 1.3 tons of poultry litter. And so what that means is if we have applied on an N basis, we have over-applied P approaching 5 tons of manure compared to what we need to meet our P needs. And so really think about it from your P fertility program. And then, you know, one of the challenges that and the feedback I get from producers that use manure is, well, I can't count on that nitrogen. I don't know when it's going to come. I don't know when it's going to mineralize. And so, you know, I just apply my full rate of N. So what I would say is apply it for the phosphorus. Don't completely discount the nitrogen in it, but plan that you're going to have commercial nitrogen in your calculation as well. And that, I think, you know, minimizes the risk in that year of manure application to being, you know, if you were doing it on an N basis, to being short of nitrogen, and really, you know, sets you up well to meet your phosphorus need in your production system. And so, you know, just if we look at that, you know, we're probably, you know, on that phosphorus-based application rate. We'll just look at the feedlot manure here. You know, we've got that 5.3 tons. You know, that's going to contribute about 87.5 pounds of applied nitrogen. And so you're going to need to add an additional 75 to 80 pounds of commercial nitrogen under this scenario. You know, and I just calculated that, you know, that'd be $65 an acre of additional cost. And so, you know, these are just, you know, sitting at the desk working through the math on, you know, kind of a checkbook based, we're not building, I haven't factored, this is looking at what's available in the first year. I haven't added in the additional calculations for, residual that'll come out as that manure decomposes. We've got a number of manure fact sheets, and I'm working on revising the fact sheet that we have on manure that'll help with that. And I'm always happy to sit down with a producer that's thinking about bringing manure into their.
How does that manure apply? Are you working it in right away, or is it injected, or what are you doing?
Yep. So.
On the nitrogen side on the manure.
Yeah. So. This is just assuming the math. I haven't factored any loss in. From a best management standpoint, incorporation is our best recommendation. Knowing how that manure, having a good analysis for that manure is key. These are just book values. Is that manure composted? Composting is certainly going to change the N and P that's in that feedlot manure, or is it raw? Like literally they're scraping it out of the pens and hauling it to the edge of your field. That is all going to impact, the nutrients that are available. Certainly that fresh manure, getting that incorporated is going to minimize the ammonia volatilization. If it's been composted, you've probably already lost a lot of that. Ammonia has already gassed off, and so that's where having that analysis comes into play. So this is just math. It is not thinking through everything. It's just to kind of walk through an example of that difference between N and P based.
Sampled like 2 times of manure for the last 12 years, so it's always been composted and then pushed up in a pile and sat there for 3 years.
Yep.
Or longer.
Yep. And that's, I'm going to guess, is going to have
Very
a
low in nitrogen.
very low
4 or
nitrogen.
5 pounds of phosphorus available per
Yep.
year, I think, per ton.
Yep.
Which it kind of depends on how thick you spread it, 'cause a lot of the guys are putting 15 to 20 tons an acre on
Yep.
anyway, so.
Yep. And that's what I was going to say here. When I think about it from a P application, think about your whole crop rotation. I've just done a single year crop, but think about it from the crop rotation. I think many, from a phosphorus standpoint, that's going to put you in that 20 to 30 ton application rate range. When you think about the cost, it doesn't make sense to incur an application cost for manure every year. Where does it fit into your rotation? If you are thinking about incorporating it, is there liming that needs to be done? Is there other factors that need to be considered as well? So just a couple, I'll say manure housekeeping items. Think about your setbacks when you're applying that manure. We would say, if you've got tile outlets, you have a well at the field, perennial stream, think about 100 feet. If it's an intermittent stream, 50. I kind of think about, if you're at the downhill side of the field and there's a stream below, certainly if you've got some grass and buffer area, that's going to help. But just hold back one pass at the bottom of the field. Give yourself some infield buffer to help capture any of those nutrients. If you get one of those large rain events, just helps to make sure that the nutrients stay in your field.
You have a couple minutes.
Okay, I'll be wrapping up here. So think about if you're going to have to store that manure, think about your storage site. Can you get there, in all weather conditions? This particularly comes into play with poultry litter. We were seeing in southeast Kansas, invariably they wanted to haul on the rainiest day of the month, and they'd back the truck driver coming out of Arkansas didn't want to get his truck stuck, so he would back the the walking floor trailer or the belt trailer off the edge of the county road and leave 2 perfect ruts right to the county road ditch. Where do you think the runoff from the manure pile traveled? Right to the county road ditch. So think about accessibility to your site. Think about your neighbors. Try to stay as far away from residences. Even composted manure still has a particular odor to it. So, think about, do you have sandy conditions? Do you have sensitive groundwater? Just think about some of those factors when you're selecting a place to store it. Soil sample, both your soil and your manure. That will really help in optimizing your economics. And particularly fresh, less important with composted manure, incorporate as soon as possible so that you can capture all of that nitrogen possible. And with that, I am happy to take any additional questions, and I'll be around through dinner.
Questions?
Can you use manure to benefit below sand?
I would think it would help. Actually, from a wind erosion standpoint in western Kansas,
Will it help the organic matter and being able to hold fertile?
yes, that's what I was going to get to was, bringing in that manure, bringing in the organic matter with that manure will, I think, help in the overall management of that.
How would you figure how much you need? Because I got a field this below sand and it only holds 40 pounds of nitrogen.
Yeah.
How big of an area, Jared, is that? Acre? 50? Okay.
Yeah.
More than truckload.
What I would say is because of the sand, I think you're going to need to think about it as a long-term investment. And I would probably you might be able to push like 60 tons. I'm speculating here. You might be able to go with a real high one-time application rate to help build that up. But just be cautious in how much nitrogen you're putting out, and is that going to leach through? The safer bet may be to stay in that 30 and plan to come back in 2 years, 3 years, depending on your crop rotation. And so plan to do that over, a couple cycles. But if you do that, let me know, because I'm always looking for on-farm manure opportunities. And
You just don't have cows, that's the problem.
and I think it'd be something that'd be really interesting to be able to look at and characterize how that, because that's a unique situation.
It's a question we get pretty frequently, and we don't
Yeah.
have a good feel for, how many tons is gonna move the needle.
Yep.
How far, especially back to essentially CEC capacity.
Yeah.
How much can we
So, yeah, I'd be happy to do some sampling with you on that.